Hey y'all, it's Andrew Reed with Mossy Creek Mushrooms, and today we're making bags. That means that I've got to do a supply run because over the holidays I didn't do anything other than the bare minimum. So it means that we're doing a little ride along while today we're documenting Andrew getting bags of soy and sawdust to make the master's mix. So I thought this would be a good opportunity for me to go over how we make our bags. And the first day country came out. The first step of making bags is the materials. So we get our bags delivered. They came in yesterday. And we order our soybean hulls and our sawdust from the co-op, which is for the soybean hulls, and then we order our sawdust through Tractor Supply. Our local Tractor Supply actually carries our sawdust for us all year long, just because he knows that I'm going to be the manager there knows I'm going to be buying sawdust every single week. So he buys enough in winter. They stockpile it. It's in their way for a little bit, but we eat away at it pretty quickly. Right now we're processing a full ton of substrate every single week. So that actually comes out to a fair amount of sawdust and soy. And our co-op stocks our soybean hull pellets specifically for us. And our local Tractor Supply specifically, buys their sawdust specifically for us. I mean, they carry it in the wintertime, but they store it all year long for us. Just because that's how much we go through. So anyways, we're on our way to Tractor Supply right now. We've just been to the co-op. And now we're gonna go get that sawdust. So I'll see you in just a few minutes. Bye. Guys, thought of one more thing that I want to talk about in this particular video, and that comes down to your price per bag. A lot of people get really wrapped up in saving pennies on your bags, and you know, I understand if you're selling wholesale and you are producing thousands of bags, those pennies add up quick. I mean, even at hundreds of bags, your pennies probably add up fairly quick, but I produce a full ton of substrate every single week. The talk around the test that a lot of people do is that they have actually gotten better efficiency out of smaller bags. So the people doing 4.5 pound, 5 pound bags are getting a better efficiency, biological efficiency that is, over the 10 to 12 pound bags. You know, we do 12 pound bags over the 10 pound bags. And here's why that doesn't matter at all to me. My labor cost is cut in half with a 12 pound bag. When people are saying, you know, man, I really want that best biological efficiency, and I'm really concerned about pinching those few little pennies out. My bags, I don't even collect all the mushrooms that grow off these bags. Why am I worried about the biological efficiency on the bag? I care about the first flush and the second flush. And other than that, I care about my cost of labor. Labor is your biggest cost when it comes to growing mushrooms, hands down. I cut my labor cost in half overnight when I went over to 12 pound bags. That's because I basically get 2 bags for one group of action, one unit of man hour that goes into 2 bags. I get to cut that in half. I get a person that they put it up to Thor one time, they put it up to Mousetrap one time, instead of twice for the 2 6 pound bags. It would take them twice as long. Folding bags is a huge time sink if you want nice crisp lines, which we do. So when we're folding that bag down, we want to make sure that our lines get really nice and tight so that the sealer works better in the laboratory. Also, so that our bags self-seal when they cool. When they cool, they create a vacuum inside the bag. It pulls that wet bag closed, creates that seal. So we do care about that. But the way I get around that not mattering as much is by doubling the size of my bags. Another thought on the way we do bags is the material cost again. I buy sawdust pellets, I buy soy pellets. I don't pinch pennies on my sawdust. A lot of people go and they get sawdust from a wood mill or something like that and get it for free. Some people get $20 for a huge truckload. Some people, I mean, it comes down to basically paying nothing for sawdust. Sawdust makes up a it makes up maybe 20 cents of my bag. Let's say it made 40 cents off of my bag. I don't have to store a big truckload of sawdust in my yard. I live in a neighborhood. I grow out of a basement. So when you're starting out, worrying about getting free materials like coffee grounds are a terrible substrate. They don't grow anything hardly. They contaminate really easily, but they're free. And free is a trap. It's absolutely a trap. If you don't have the infrastructure to handle that free material easily, it's going to cause you a lot of problems. It is better to just pay for your substrate. I buy it by the 50-pound bag. I know exactly how many 50-pound and 40-pound bags of sawdust and soy it takes for me to make 166 12-pound bags. That means that I only have to buy those every week, and I can buy them on my way home from deliveries up in Knoxville. So on my way home, I just pick up my materials. We use them the very next day or the same day, and then boom, I don't have to store anything. I can use my limited amount of space very wisely. When I pay for sawdust, an added benefit that I get from the pelletized stuff is that they've already basically been heat treated. They've been run through the extruder, and they get extremely hot. There's almost no moisture content that creates variable moisture in my sawdust. If my sawdust sits outside and gets rained on, then I have to do a test. If I don't do a test, then I'm going to have my bags are going to be soggy. And then the next week, whenever everything's dried out, they'll just be wildly variable. And that variability is something that I don't really want. I want as close to the same weight as possible. It doesn't have to be exact. That's why we do volumetric scoops, which I'll explain later. But we don't need to worry about how much moisture content is in our sawdust. We get to add almost all of that ourselves. The sawdust is cleaner because it's already been heat treated through a pressure cooker, so to speak. The extruder creates a lot of heat and pressure. It takes all the moisture out, so I don't have a lot of bacterial and mold growth in those pellets while they're being stored. There's no fermentation until I add water to them. It just makes more sense to me to buy pelleted substrate. Not to mention that pelleted substrate is easier to dispense than bulk sawdust. A lot of people get big fancy mixers, and I just think that is a ridiculous waste of money when you can get pellets. It makes sense for some people. Wheat bran, so a lot of people are growing shiitake, maitake, things like that. They probably need wheat bran, and I haven't found a good pelleted wheat bran mix at all. So anything that requires something other than the master's mix, I don't grow on. The good news is, so many things grow in the master's mix, like beet, oyster mushrooms, cone tooth, lion's mane, king oyster, chestnut mushrooms, just black poplar. The list just continues to go on, and you get that huge amount of variety on a single substrate that you can dry pack, reducing your labor, meaning that you don't have to pinch pennies. If you're doing what we're doing, where we're selling direct to the chef and collecting the wholesaler's markup, which means I get to work half as hard as any mushroom grower I know who sells to wholesalers, and then you design your process to be as little labor as possible, you get to collect all that money that comes right back to you. So sure, I may be paying, say I'm paying $1 more in material cost, right? I'm saving $3 on my labor, which means that I've just pocketed $2. So when it comes to making bags, the first part is adding the dry material, which is what Samantha's doing right now, using Thor. Thor is completely without electricity. It is literally just a hammer. We called it Mjolnir, that's why it ended up becoming Thor. It's got 2 volumetric containers in it, and as the hammer actuates you from right to left, one pocket dumps while the other pocket is being filled. It goes back the other way, this pocket dumps, and then this pocket gets filled. And we always try to add sawdust first, so we start on the right where the sawdust is, and then soy next. The reason why is because soy soaks up the water faster than sawdust does. Sawdust is harder, we actually want it hydrated better, and so that it kind of hydrates a little bit more evenly. You'll see in the footage that the water does not, it doesn't really matter which one's on the bottom necessarily, because there's a whole swirling action that comes when Mousetrap does its thing. And so, you can hear Mousetrap refilling. And so it becomes pretty important to try to have the correct amount of moisture, which we get, again, volumetric wise, with Mousetrap. Up above me, we have a 5-gallon bucket. The water line is set where it refills automatically at 7 pounds of water. We do about 5¼ pounds worth of dry material per bag and roughly 7 pounds of water. That comes out to a 12-pound bag, roughly speaking. The second part of our process is with Mousetrap, which is right here above my head. It adds the water into our bags. We're working on a system that consolidates both. And the reason why we haven't done that is because these two were just prototypes that we built, Thor and Mousetrap, as a way to test our theory, just a proof of concept. It turned out to work so well that here our prototypes are, what was it, 2.5 years later, still chugging along, doing 1 ton of wet substrate per week. Mousetrap does 7 pounds of water into our bags, making our 12-pound bags roughly 60% hydrated. That 60% is more than what you get with most people. Most growers do about 50% water, from what I've seen. I think that some of the reasons why we have, or one of the reasons why we have such large first flushes is the fact that we do so much water in a bag. A bag runs out of water long before it runs out of food. That said, I've tried with all kinds of methods of adding water to the bag later, and some of them work and some of them don't. It's just too hit or miss for a commercial op in my opinion, so I haven't played with it any further. We just add a lot of water in the beginning. That said, Mousetrap operates in a pretty simple way. We have a lever here that Samantha raises up, it tips the bucket over. We have a funnel. That funnel guides water down into the bag out this chute. We have a solenoid valve over here behind me. We use the House of Hydro refill valve that we got in our humidifier kit, one of the extra ones that we ordered, to create a fill line in the bucket. That fill line stops the water at the volume for 7 pounds. We went volume with everything just because it was so easy to do. And it keeps our bags pretty consistent. We have some fluctuation. Some fluctuation is not bad, you just don't want too much. These operate well within the parameters that we want. Just wait for it to refill, go again. We're working on a system that will speed that up, but for now, this is actually really fast. We can do 1 full ton of substrate in 2 hours and have the steamer packed. That is 166 12-pound bags done in 2 hours, which is a good day. On a bad day, you know, if everything goes wrong, you're talking 3 hours but even then, 3 hours for 166 12-pound bags is a pretty good pace. That's set up, tear down, clean up, everything. We're not, it's not just taking one bag and then extrapolating. That is timed over multiple days of production to make sure that we have a good average. 3 hours is our, like, everything's going to hell average. 2 hours is our everything is just hammered out. We set up and then we're sweeping within 2 hours. So this here is the hellhole. We call it that because it gets really hot. We fit our 166 bags in here. We have to go one layer above the edge here, and then we stack a little bit more on top of that. We have just a black plastic tarp that covers the top of it, and then we have a blanket, just an old blanket that we throw on top of it that further insulates it. The sides are covered in the aluminum foil bubble wrap. It's held up well for a couple of years, so it's starting to show its age now. And then in the back we have the boiler. I'm not really wanting to show you guys my boiler. I don't want to take on that kind of liability. There are all kinds of YouTube videos about how to build boilers. You can go to Bubba's Barrels and buy a boiler. There are all kinds of ways to get boilers. Just Google it. I just don't want to show you my death trap. That said, we have it set up outside. We have our 36-hour cycle. It's roughly 12 to 16 hours to warm up, and then the rest of the time is just simply running at temp. A lot of people will get concerned about caramelizing their sugars and everything else in their substrate. I've never once ever considered that really a big deal. I rarely ever get a batch that goes bad or goes slow, so I'm not really all that concerned with it. The time that we were talking about, where it takes us 2 to 3 hours to run 166 bags, includes loading the steamer and turning it on. Beyond that, there's really not much more to making bags. One of the easiest ways I tell people when they're first beginning is to measure out, 2.5 pounds of sawdust, 2.5 pounds of soy, and put them into a container to measure the volumes, right? 2.5 pounds of sawdust and soy should be pretty comparable, so you should be able to just do one. We used to use just hand scoops that we bought at Walmart. They were pitchers, and we measured out weight, put them in there, put a black line on the pitcher. We would just scoop the pitcher, and we did the same thing for water. 2.5 pounds, 2.5 pounds. A gallon of water for 7 pounds makes a 12-pound bag. Let hydrate, fold, set in your steamer, you're done. So the mix that we use is called the Master's Mix, created by T.R. Davis. I don't remember how the name came about. I think it started off as a joke and then it kind of stuck. He's got a video on it. I'll link the video down below. You should check him out, Earth Angel's Mushrooms. The Master's Mix is just 50% soy, 50% sawdust. I'll let TR tell you the story of how he came up with that in his own video. It is easily the best substrate I've found for growing the widest variety of mushrooms, getting the best looking flushes, and getting the biggest flushes you can. So they make nice quality mushrooms in a larger quantity, and paying for it all in pellets really just makes sense for me for keeping the operation lean. The method that we use, we call the no-mix dry pack method. We add dry ingredients first, we do not mix them, then we add water and let it hydrate in the bag. Cook it, and then go through, inoculate it in the lab, where it then gets mixed. It never made sense to me to pre-mix substrate when you're just going to be mixing it again. Especially if you're doing the dry pack method, you can add your solids and your water in incremented amounts. You know exactly how much substrate's going into each bag. You don't have to have anything to weigh them out or anything. That was kind of the revolutionary concept for us, and then we started hand scooping everything. Then we went to Thor and Mousetrap as our prototypes. We were supposed to have new iterations fairly quickly, But these work so well that we've kept them around for a couple of years and didn't start working on the new iterations till now. Now we've almost got a system that's ready to show, and it will speed things up a lot more than what our system has right now. But even now, being able to not have to worry about mixing our substrate at all, we're able to pack 1 full ton of wet substrate at a time in 2 to 3 hours, which is a pretty phenomenal rate. So in conclusion, we really sat down and we tried to figure out a system that would work for us. We questioned, why do we do the things that we do? Why premix? And the answer came to us that we don't need to premix. We don't need a $50,000 mixer or conveyor belt or even a $1,000 mixer. We can take some spare plywood, leftover buckets, some poverty, and some ingenuity, and we came up with a system that allows us to pack a full ton of substrate in as little as 2 hours on a good day, from setup to teardown. And it means that we're able to really be productive. We standardize our product, we standardize our bags, we standardize on the pellets. I think that really sitting down and question why you do certain things, and then figuring out, oh, I don't, things like I don't need to mix whenever I'm going to mix the spawn and the substrate anyways. That means that my substrate's going to get thoroughly mixed. Why mix it twice? You don't have to mix it twice. So, like I said, in conclusion, focus on your systems. Get it to work for you.